Welcome to the Solocast of Firecode Tech. In these episodes, it's just going to be me, your host, Gus Gagliardi. There's going to be a range of topics, but I'm going to talk about specific technologies, installation standards, codes and how they work, as well as some other interesting topics that don't neatly fit inside of the context of a normal interview. Hello all. Welcome to episode 45 of the Solocast of Firecode Tech. In this episode, we're talking about resources for fire and life safety professionals. Yes, it is a common theme on the interview episodes where I ask people where they like to search for information in order to keep their finger on the pulse of the industry. This episode is me trying to give back in what I've learned over the 2+ years of doing the podcast. This episode is geared for somebody who is looking for a way to learn more about the industry, which is, I assume, why you're listening to this podcast, or maybe you just like to hear the sound of my voice. I'm not sure. Be sure to check out the show notes for this episode. There is going to be a huge list of links to all the different resources that I'm talking about. This episode is going to cover professional societies, online tools, magazines, podcasts that I enjoy listening to, and much more. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and follow us on social media. Oh, and if you could do me a huge favor and give me a 5 stars on Apple Podcasts, that would be a huge help. So this list is not in any particular order, but I'm going to start off with some maybe obvious choices and some big industry names. The first one on my list is the Society for Fire Protection Engineers. This is an organization that I am a member of at the local chapter level, but also they have a national membership. Resources and materials that you can expect to find from this organization are they have a magazine, and they also offer on a semi-monthly basis a resource online called FPE Extra, where they will cover a topic in the industry that is useful and new and pressing for the fire protection engineering industry. They have a variety of different chapters, and these chapters are all around the world. So SFPE produces publications that are industry standard for fire protection engineering. They also are a advocate for fire protection engineers and lobby for legislation and the continuation of the profession. Second resource I want to go over is NFPA. NFPA has free access to codes and standards. This is something that I always talk about, but I wanted to add a link to where you can find this codes and standards access in NFPA. They have online courses that are phenomenal. They are a little bit pricey, but if you can get the right course, it is well worth it. They also conduct webinars that are sometimes free. Keep an eye out for these. There are a ton of free resources that NFPA has, like information and research on warehouse fires and other common fire protection topics. So if I'm ever looking for statistics or data on common fires or occurrences, I go look at NFPA's online research resources. There's a good chance that if I'm mentioning anything in this podcast, that there's a link in the show notes, just as a reminder. NFPA has a magazine that is interesting and informative, and it comes out on I think it's a quarterly basis. If you are a member of NFPA, you get these copies for free, but I think you might also be able to view these online. The International Code Council, or ICC, is the standards development organization for the model codes in the United States by and large. There is free access to these codes online, and also, like NFPA, I forgot to mention, they have a podcast. NFPA's podcast is called the NFPA Podcast, and ICC's podcast is called ICC Pulse. Like NFPA, ICC has codes and standards development committees, and they broadcast the results of the committees, and you can be a part of the codes and standards development process. That is a great way to get information about why the codes and standards are structured the way that they are and what is important and coming up next for the code cycles. ICC also has a magazine, ICC Safe, and they also offer training and certification. Both NFPA and International Code Council offer training and certification. I haven't taken any of ICC's training, but I can speak for NFPA, and I will say that the training sessions for the core standards like NFPA 13, NFPA 72, NFPA 20, and NFPA 101 have been outstanding in my experience. Next, I want to talk about a couple of my favorite smaller company resources. These are huge organizations that I talked about before. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about individual contributors or smaller companies. First off is Joe Meyer. Joe Meyer is a big influence for me. He's one of the reasons why I even thought this podcast was possible. And so if you go to his site, meyerfire.com, there are tons of free resources, a forum that has a place where people will speak about questions and different topics in the industry, a monthly blog where Joe gives his thoughts on the industry, the different resource tools and courses that he is developing, free handouts and different design tasks that are available online, usually for just the price of your email address, which I think is well worth it. And he now has the Meyer Fire University, which I don't have any experience with, but it seems like a pretty stellar option for a integrated learning platform for learning how to be a fire protection engineer. There are a bunch of great free tools on Joe's website. Starting off in my career, I used to use his water supply tool and many of his tools on his website. I still will default to these tools in a pinch. Next, I want to talk about Chris Campbell and his website, the Building Code blog. Chris has resources for, and I forgot to mention, Joe has resources for the PE prep course, which is a commonality that Chris also shares. He has free resources for life safety and code analysis and PE prep course material. I used Joe's prep course for getting ready for my PE exam and passed without a problem, so I can give an endorsement for that. The next couple free resources I want to talk about are podcasts in fire and life safety that I enjoy. First off is my favorite and one of the newest is the Fire Science Show with Wojciech. Wojciech has been on the podcast a couple times, I'm sure you guys know. The Fire Science Show is a fire engineer and researcher and educator who speaks to other scientists and engineers and industry professionals about very technical topics. Drew Slocum is the host of the Fire Protection Podcast. The Fire Protection Podcast has guests that range from more technical topics to more business-oriented topics. The Fire Sprinkler Podcast is hosted by Chris Logan. Chris has a definite slant for fire sprinkler and everything related to sprinkler installation, and now has a bit more of an equipment focus. STI's The Burn Podcast is hosted by John Zalepka. John is someone who has worked in passive fire protection for a number of years, and he has a wide variety of guests on. I've already mentioned, but it bears repeating, that ICC Pulse and NFPA Link are two good podcasts. They have really interesting topic from people who are very well established with good takes on what is happening Have to give a couple of shout outs to previous guests on the podcast. First one is Kelsey with Kilo Lima Code. This is a good resource for people who are based in Canada and want to read a blog that talks about topics in fire and life safety. A previous podcast guest and another good resource for fire alarm interested professionals is Paul Inferreira's course for fire alarm on the Cape Fear Community College. This course is a great prep course for NICET 1 and 2. Check out the link in the show notes for more information. If you're interested in performance-based design, Dave Stacy and Performance-Based Design LLC has a great blog on the topic. They cover common information pertaining to smoke and fire modeling. Next, I have a couple of my favorite tools online for sizing relating to pump and fire water storage tank. First one is AC Fire Pump's Fire Pump Selection Tool. This is a good tool for a quick hydraulic curve, and the Superior Tank Fire Water Storage Tank tool helps you get a nominal sizing for a fire water storage tank and will give you an idea, if you've already done your calculations, how much the physical dimensions are going to be for your fire water storage tank. Once again, if you guys are still listening, all of these resources are down in the show notes and they are listed sequentially in the order that I've talked about them on the show. Up next is a couple of Revit tools that I like and that are free. The first one is Vikings Toolbar. Viking offers a free toolbar, and now they are in the beta for a hydraulic calculation software that you can download for free at their website. There's a lot of nice baked-in families that are available on a toolbar, so you don't have to worry about maintaining these Revit families for yourself. Next up is PyRevit. PyRevit is a free application that has a bunch of nice baked-in features and offers a way to integrate Python into your Revit. One of my favorite free resources for Revit is DRoot's toolbar that they offer for free. DRoots has interesting and useful tools like a way to import Excel sheets into Revit into drafting views, legend views, or schedules. That's one feature I use all the time. Check out DRoots. They are constantly making new features. Their latest feature includes a IFC family viewer. So if you're working with an architect that has produced a structural or architectural model that is one giant IFC family, you can take a look at that in depth. DRoots also offers some free Dynamo tutorials online on YouTube, but you can find them on their site as well. Up next, I have a couple of blogs that I like to read for fire and life safety. The first one is Consulting and Specifying Engineer. This blog and or magazine is free online, and you can find, not every issue has good fire protection articles, but you can find them, and also you can search specifically for fire and life safety content. This next one is not necessarily a blog, but is still a good place to go look at fire alarm specific content for the International Family of Codes. Fire Alarms Online covers good information for industry specific and occupancy specific topics for fire alarm. Next up are a couple of Reddit communities that I frequent for fire and life safety. The first one is Fire PE, which is Fire Protection Engineering, and it's a subreddit, and it's not too active, but a lot of times people will get on this subreddit and talk about fire and life safety problems or professional development topics. The next one is Our Fire Alarm. This one is a bit more popular than the couple thousand members that Fire PE has. This subreddit is really technician centered and has a pretty active community of people who talk about common fire alarm installer and fitter problems and just funny memes and stuff. The last subreddit that I check out from time to time is R Firefighting. This subreddit loves showing pictures of new fire trucks and talking about the struggles and different career development paths and options for fire department professionals or fire service professionals. That's going to be it for this episode. There is a list of 10 or more resources left in the show notes that I didn't get time to talk about, but go check them out. Some non-fire protection related resources and some more fire and life safety related resources. That's it for this time. I'll talk to you next time on Fire Code Tech. Thanks for listening, everybody. Be sure to share the episode with a friend if you enjoyed it. Don't forget that fire protection and life safety is serious business. The views and opinions expressed on this podcast are by no means a professional consultation or a codes and standards interpretation. Be sure to contact a licensed professional if you are getting involved with fire protection and or life safety. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.